What if I told you there's a franchise that was never the same again after one single player put on its jersey? And what if I asked you why, decades later, fans still get chills hearing one name echo through the arena? Before we keep going, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Did you see Michael Jordan play live? Or do you only know the legend through stories? Because today we're not just talking about championships. We're talking about identity, legacy, and eternity. What happened to the Chicago Bulls wasn't just a string of wins in the National Basketball Association. It was a cultural transformation that redefined what it means to dominate a sport. When Michael Jordan entered the league in 1984, he didn't inherit a powerhouse. He found an average franchise with no winning tradition and no real national presence. What he built there was more than a dynasty. It was a sports myth that crossed generations, borders, and even the very logic of the game. Chicago was never just another NBA city again. And maybe the most impressive part is that even after all this time, the shadow of that era still shapes expectations, comparisons, and dreams inside the organization. Today, you're going to understand why the Magic wasn't just a historic moment, but a permanent mark on the soul of the franchise. In the years leading up to Jordan's arrival, the Bulls were a team trying to survive in a league dominated by much bigger storylines. The NBA was living through the peak of historic rivalries, TV ratings were rising, fueled by epic matchups, and Chicago was watching it all from the outside, like a spectator. The franchise had flashes of competitiveness in the 70s, but nothing that truly earned national respect. The arena wasn't intimidating, the jersey didn't carry historic weight, and the internal culture was still being shaped. When Jordan was drafted, expectations were high, but there were no guarantees of instant transformation. He was an explosive talent coming out of college, wired with an uncommon mentality, but still placed on an inconsistent roster within a structure that didn't fully know how to maximize his greatness. His early years were marked by spectacular individual performances, 40 and 50-point games, dunks that would have gone viral even before the digital era, but also by early playoff exits. The team relied too heavily on his individual brilliance, and that exposed an uncomfortable truth: talent without structure doesn't build legacy. The city started to realize it had something special in its hands, but the question still hung in the air. Would it be enough to change the franchise's destiny, or just another star shining in the middle of chaos? The real transformation began when talent ran into brutal resistance. In the late 80s, the Bulls repeatedly crashed into a wall called the Detroit Pistons, the team that symbolized physical force, intimidation, and a clear philosophy: stop Michael Jordan at all costs. The so-called Jordan rules weren't just a defensive strategy, they were a psychological test. Every drive was met with hard contact, every layup came with bruises, every loss piled on more frustration. Chicago had to learn that individual brilliance doesn't break down a collective system built for war. It was during that stretch that the organization realized evolution had to be structural. The full emergence of Scottie Pippen as a reliable right-hand man shifted the team's balance, bringing versatile defense and high basketball IQ. At the same time, the implementation of the triangle offense under Phil Jackson redefined the flow of the game, reducing predictability and spreading responsibility across the floor. Jordan changed too. He added muscle, strengthened his body to absorb contact, and more importantly, matured emotionally. He understood that leadership wasn't just about scoring, it was about raising the collective standard. The losses to Detroit left scars, but they also created an obsession with excellence. When they finally broke through that wall, it wasn't just a basketball win, it was the solidification of a ruthless mindset. Chicago was no longer a team dependent on flashes of brilliance, it was a machine ready to dominate. When the first championship arrived, something shifted in the city's atmosphere. The trophy didn't just represent a title, it validated years of pain and rebuilding. From that point on, the Bulls stopped chasing respect and started commanding fear. The first three-peat established an identity built on suffocating defense, tactical intelligence, and a leader who seemed to level up under the brightest pressure. Jordan raised his game in the finals, averaging an astonishing 33, 6 points per game throughout his championship runs, turning tight contests into legendary chapters. After a brief retirement and return, the second three-peat followed, perhaps even more symbolic because it proved the hunger was still there. The peak tension came against the Utah Jazz in the 1998 NBA Finals, a series marked by physical exhaustion and emotional wear. The final sequence, the steal and the game-winning shot, wasn't just skill. It was absolute cold-blooded control under extreme pressure. That image froze in time and became a symbol of competitive perfection. The world wasn't just watching a championship team. It was witnessing a dynasty that redefined global standards. The NBA was expanding internationally, and Chicago Red became a cultural icon. It wasn't just winning, it was supremacy wrapped in epic storytelling. What happened in Chicago in the 90s went beyond any statistic. The franchise didn't just win, it became a global symbol. The Chicago Bulls stopped being a regional team and turned into a cultural powerhouse recognized on every continent. Red jerseys started showing up in the streets of Brazil, across Europe, and throughout Asia, even on people who had never watched a full NBA game. Michael Jordan's image transcended the sport. He became a reference point for excellence, discipline, and an extreme competitive mindset. The so-called Jordan mentality started being studied by athletes in other sports, and even by executives in the corporate world. Inside the organization, that standard was absorbed. Practice stopped being just routine and became a commitment to greatness. The franchise's culture was shaped by constant accountability, total focus, and zero tolerance for mediocrity. Every player who walked in quickly understood that wearing that jersey meant carrying a heavy legacy. The impact also helped solidify the NBA's international expansion, boosting ratings and sales around the globe. Chicago wasn't just a champion, it was an aesthetic, competitive, and cultural reference point. Very few teams in sports history have managed to build an identity so strong that it survived intact even after the golden era ended. Decades have passed, rosters have changed, generations have come and gone, but one thing remains untouchable: the collective memory of that era. The United Center may host new talents, new prospects, and new hopes, but every comparison inevitably circles back to the 90s. The reason is simple: that dynasty didn't just deliver wins, it delivered competitive perfection. Every banner hanging in the arena is a visual reminder that that standard was real. For the fan base, it's not just nostalgia, it's identity. Many fans grew up tying family moments, celebrations, and even life decisions to nights when Chicago ruled the basketball world. The franchise lives in constant tension between honoring the past and building the future. But the shadow of that greatness also acts as a guiding light. It reminds the organization what's possible when talent, leadership, and structure align. And maybe that's exactly why Chicago will never forget, because what was lived there wasn't just a run of championships. It was a time when the city felt invincible, respected, and eternal. The magic isn't only in the old highlights. It lives in the expectation that one day, something like that might happen again. History shows that some eras fade, but others become mythology. What the Bulls experienced was more than sports success. It was cultural and emotional transformation. If you believe we'll see another dynasty like that, drop a comment on which franchise could repeat that kind of impact. If this video made you relive that era, leave a like and share it with someone who also misses the intensity of the 90s. Because understanding this story isn't just about looking back. It's about recognizing the standard that still defines greatness today.